I'm Gauri Maheshwari, and I'm Hindu. I would define religion as the study of the spirit and of how everything came to be. Hinduism is a monotheistic religion. It believes in one God that is all-pervasive, both immanent and transcendent. We believe in karma, which is the universal law of cause and effect. We believe in rebirth, in reincarnation, and eventually, once we have become perfected, we'll achieve moksha, where we'll merge with God. We believe in dharma, which is the necessity of righteous living, of living and seeing God within everybody, and doing our duty to society. We believe that every religion is valid, that the passion within each religion is what's important and not what name they call the God. The soul is essentially one with Brahman already. We just don't know it yet. We have this veil of Maya, or illusion, which gives us the idea that we are separate from God. Once we have achieved enlightenment, then we will merge with God like a drop of water into the ocean. So we have a little spark of God within us, and that is called the Atman. We have a lot of sacred texts. We have the Vedas, which are the most important texts. They came from the rishis, or the seers, in ancient India. When they were meditating, they heard the voice of God, and they heard the voice of God, and they spread the word. And it finally became written down after thousands and thousands of years. We also have the epics like the Mahabharata, which has the Bhagavad Gita in it. And those capture the essence of what the Vedas are about and bring it to a level that everyone can understand. We have the Upanishads, which were written by saints in the forest. They would go alone and meditate and write down what they thought and what they felt. And those are deeply mystical and spiritual and require a lot of study. The Ramayana has Ram and Sita and Hanuman, who show us how to be good people. And it applies in every era. The stories are so universal that whenever we have a problem, we can just look to that text. It's huge, so it will touch on anything that we need to know. And it'll give us guidance on what we should do and how we should behave. Unlike the Western religions, we do not believe in an intrinsic evil. Hinduism doesn't have an eternal heaven and hell. It has states of being where karma is burned off, either good or bad, and we're reborn once it equalizes. Karma can go into your next incarnation or 100 incarnations after that. There is no place that non-believers will go. If you have faith, then you're a good person, then you achieve good karma. In Western religions, the universe is created once and we will be destroyed once. In Hinduism, the universe is constantly being created, preserved, destroyed, and recreated. There is no heaven or hell. Everyone has one path, and that is towards God. Each person will have different bumps in the path. Some may take more lifetimes to achieve it. But no person, no soul, will be denied oneness with God. Hindus do not try to convert people into their faith usually. We believe that every faith is valid. And if you want to be a Christian, if you believe in Jesus, then that is perfect. We don't want to take you away from that. So there are obviously always going to be radicals who say that this is the only way. But as a general rule, Hindus do not believe that any other religion is wrong. And so we won't force anybody into our religion. We do allow people to convert on their own will. It's a very personal thing, a spiritual thing. There is no formal conversion. It's if you believe you are a Hindu, then you are a Hindu. So a lot of people like to change their name, like me, to symbolize their new faith or the faith that was always there, just not realized. So that is very much a personal thing and not required. Well, I was raised Catholic and I never really connected with it. So I was spiritual for a really long time. And I was reading about all of the different religions to see if I fit into any of them. And once I started reading about Hinduism, my mind just opened. I was like, wow, I believe this. This is amazing. I didn't think anybody else really believed what I believed. So I kept reading and reading and reading. And after about a year or two, I decided to go to temple. It was really scary because, I didn't know what to expect. But everyone there was so nice, and I've been going ever since. It's nice to have a place where you have a community that is so similar to you in such important ways, like what you believe in. Just to worship with people, it brings a new level to spirituality. There's one thing to do puja at home, but to do it with such passion, around other people with such passion, there's nothing quite like it. There are a lot of misconceptions about Hinduism. One is that we are polytheistic. We do believe in one God that takes many different forms. And once you get to learn more and more about Hinduism, it becomes really apparent. Um, we also don't worship idols necessarily. We do understand that that is a stone, and somebody carved it, and it's just a stone. But we need those tools to help us conquer our mind. Our mind wanders incessantly. So during the puja, we had something to concentrate on. We had something to shower our affection on. It's hard to develop this love within you for God when you have no place to really put it. You're just like, I love you. So we do that, and also the bells ringing helps focus us and clear our mind. Loud noises just kind of point the mind towards what it's supposed to be doing, and the incense puts us in a good mood. So it's all of the stuff that we do, all of the rituals we do are tools to help us find God within ourselves. It's all about oneness, all about being part of that supreme Brahman and realizing that both within yourself and within others. And by doing that, everything else will fall into place. If you see God within everything, you'll act right. You'll do the things that you need to do. The afterlife. Well, when you die, depending on your karma, what you did during your life, you will get reborn higher as a human, which would be great, or lower as some sort of animal or plant, or even just a human in less fortunate circumstances. And it all just depends on what goals you need to achieve. If you need to realize humility, then you'll be placed in a life where you understand what it's like to be lower, and you realize the equality of everybody. So there's not really a heaven and hell. Your karma burns out mostly in this life. The things that you go through will get you better or worse karma. And it is possible to burn off karma between lives, but heaven and hell aren't really a big part of Hinduism. And once you have evolved and have become enlightened, then you merge with God. Well, Hinduism is very much a way of life rather than just a religion. It comes into every aspect of your being, what you think, how you feel, what you do. It's made me very humble when I realize that God is both within me and that rock and that piece of grass and that little bug. I am so thankful for everything, and it makes me a kinder, gentler person, since ahimsa, or nonviolence, is such an important part. So the main deities in Hinduism are Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma is the creator, Vishnu the sustainer, and Shiva the destroyer, dissolutioner. They all have their counterparts, which are the feminine, powerful aspects, namely Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Parvati. And those are the most well-known Hindu gods. But there are also really important ones that aren't. But there are also other ones that are important as well. Ganesha is extremely important in every Hindu's life, as he removes the obstacles for worship, for becoming a better person, for evolution. He is that connection that we have to God. Krishna and Rama and the other incarnations of Vishnu remind us what it is to be a good person. So it's not just anthropomorphic Vishnu out there somewhere. It's a concrete idea and an ideal that we can emulate in our lives. The planets are also really important in a lot of Hindus' lives, as they are believed to have a direct influence on our daily experiences. So worshiping the planets and the massive amounts of energy that they are is important. How would I characterize God? At its essence is Brahman. God is not characterizable. He is without attributes, without form, totally beyond our perception. Our tiny little human brains can't understand it. If I was to describe the different deities that God has formed, I could do that. Ganesha has a great sense of humor. He's gentle and easy to please. Vishnu is full of love and compassion, and Shiva is strong in the most soft ways, if it makes sense. He's like water that wears away the stone. He is so flexible that it's powerful. God takes different forms depending on which job he has to do. So like a man can be a husband, a father, and a fireman. He's the same man, but is called by different things depending on what he does. And so that's what God is like when he's Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva. Why do I believe in God? I've never really given it thought about why. I feel it's kind of self-evident to me. And I know to a lot of people it isn't rational, but in my mind it makes total sense how nothing could become something, how all this science forms what we are, how little atoms stick together and form you and me. And everything I see and experience and learn just solidifies that belief that there's something. Now, why Hinduism? I could be wrong. I could definitely be wrong. But it connects with me, and I just believe it. There's something unexplainable about that connection with you and God. My religion is important to me because it is the essence of life. It is the essence of what I'm doing here and why I'm doing it. It gives me purpose in what I accomplish, whether it's something little like getting a good grade on my test or something big as in like changing the world in some sort of way. Hindus worship at the temple and at home in their little mandirs, the little puja rooms. Temple is a place where Hindus can come together and worship together. And it becomes more powerful when you have all of those people with all that love around you. It's almost contagious. And we treat God like a king at temple. We perform abhishekam, which is a bath of all the sweetest liquids we have. We give him our best food and our best flowers. We give him incense and chant his names, and that helps us to bring out that devotion that is within us, bring out that connection to God. And when there's other people there, the vibrations are just stronger and stronger. And at home, we can't go to temple every day. Some do, but religion and worship is important every day. And so we'll have something at home, whether it's simply just putting a flower on the Lord or saying, namaste, and keeping that within your mind all day. Or when you're cooking and you just repeat the name of God, that in itself is worship. Or, holding the door open for somebody who has their hands full, that's worship. When you keep, I see God in that person, I'm going to treat that person like a God. That is worship, and it's perfect.
Hi, my name is Raj Narayan, and I'm going to talk about Hindu history, beliefs, and culture. Hinduism is the oldest living religion in the world and the third largest. More than 1 billion Hindus live in 150 different countries, mostly in India. The United States alone is home to over 2 million Hindus. Origins of Hinduism. To find the distant beginnings of Hinduism, we have to go back over 6,000 years to the Saraswati-Indus region of the Indian subcontinent. This vast area extends from Sri Lanka in the south to the Himalayan mountains in the north, from the Arabian Sea in the west to the Bay of Bengal in the east. The Saraswati-Indus civilization developed here, eventually becoming the world's largest and most advanced, surpassing even those of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and China. The civilization is named after the area's two great river systems, the Saraswati and the Indus. It is called the Vedic culture after the earliest Hindu sacred text. It is also known as the Harappan culture after the site of its first discovery in 1920. This was an urban culture centered around many highly organized cities, some with populations of 80,000, which was rare in those days. The cities were connected by trade routes which extended west to Mesopotamia and east to Central Asia. 5,000 years later, archaeologists discovered pottery, seals, statues, beads, jewelry, tools, toys, miniature carts, and dice, all of which hint at what life was like at the source of the civilization that has evolved into modern-day India. The flat stone seals have writing on them and images of deities, ceremonies, symbols, people, plants, and animals. Even though writing was widespread among the people, we have not deciphered it yet. From these artifacts, we learn that certain religious and cultural practices were identical to those followed by Hindus today. One seal shows a meditating figure that scholars link to Lord Shiva, while others show the lotus posture used today in Hatha Yoga. Other discoveries connect the far past with today, including swastikas, statues of the Mother Goddess, worship of the Shiva Lingam, fire altars that show the ceremonial practice of Vedic people who are also known as Aryans, sacred baths, priests, sacred animals, and symbolism in the performing arts. You must be familiar with the traditional greeting, Namaste. Here is a small clay statue portraying the same. And this statue shows a woman with red powder in the part of her hair. Married women even today observe this same custom. As the Saraswati Indus culture declined when the river dried up around 2000 BCE, many people migrated to more fertile places in eastern and central India, especially along the river Ganga and also beyond the subcontinent. Hindu scriptures. The four Vedas, the central holy books of Hinduism, were composed in Sanskrit starting at least 6,000 years ago. The Rig Veda, the earliest of the four, speaks repeatedly of the Saraswati, describing it as the most mighty of rivers, flowing from the Himalayan mountains to the sea. Thus, we know that a large part of this sacred text was composed well before 2000 BCE, by which time the river had dried up. Vedic hymns praise God, gods, and goddesses and describe a powerful and spiritual people, their clans, kings and emperors, fights and battles. Their sophisticated economy included agriculture, industry, trade, commerce, and cattle raising. Vedas call the country Sapta Sindhu, meaning the land of 7 rivers. The words Hindu and India both come from the Sanskrit word Sindhu, which means river. These Vedic hymns describe a form of fire worship, yajna, performed around a specially built altar. Archaeologists have unearthed such altars in several Saraswati Indus cities. Hindus still perform fire worship in this form. Originally, these thousands of hymns were not written down but memorized. Even today, there are priests who can chant from memory as many as 10,500 verses, which takes 50 hours. There are dozens of other sacred texts that Hindus revere, including the Puranas and the writings of illumined sages. The epics Ramayana and the Mahabharata are traditional histories of India and storehouses of Hindu heritage. The Ramayana is a story of Lord Rama, 7th incarnation or avatar of Lord Vishnu and his divine wife, Sita. The Mahabharata is the world's longest epic. It is about a massive war in ancient India between cousins fighting for the throne of a great kingdom. A central episode called the Bhagavad Gita is a dialogue between Commander Arjuna and Lord Krishna, the eighth incarnation of Vishnu, on the day of the battle. The Mahabharata remains one of the most widespread scriptures in the world, with its dominant message of justice. Hindu sacred music, dance, drama, and the arts draw heavily on these two literary epics. The Hindu society. By 600 BCE, the social, religious, and philosophical ideas and practices central to Hinduism today were fully evident, having emerged from the Indus-Saraswati culture, the Vedas, Dravidian culture, and the tribal religions. A distinctive feature of society was the Varna or class system. People were classified into groups with specific occupations. Parents taught their skills to their children from a young age, providing a strong grounding in their profession or trade. These groups eventually became hereditary. Priests, warriors, merchants, and workers, including craftsmen and farmers. However, this class system did not include the various forest tribes. It also did not include small communities considered untouchable because their occupations were unclean, such as the cremation ground chandalas, scavengers, and leather workers. This system gave identity to the kinship groups and gave all citizens a sense of belonging, greater social order, and stability. The socially cohesive contributions of caste continue to play a key role in economic, social, and political life, most visibly in marriages and elections. Life in ancient times was hard work for both men and women. Women were responsible for running the household, while men for looking after their craft, farm, and family security. In general, women participated equally in religious ceremonies, festivities, and social relationships. Some of the foremost religious and political leaders in India's history have been women. Some even composed Vedic hymns. The period from 1000 BCE through the Gupta period, ending in the mid-6th century CE, was a time of great scientific and mathematical advancement. Hindus developed the counting system we use today, including the mathematical concepts of zero and decimals. Indian astronomers knew that the Earth orbits the Sun, and they calculated the length of a year with amazing precision. Medicine was so advanced that doctors were performing complex surgeries not equaled in Europe until the 18th century. India was the foremost supplier of steel to the world. In 400 CE, its foundries created an iron pillar which even stands today and has never rusted. Modern science cannot equal this feat. For thousands of years, India has been home to 1/4 of the human family. It has been honored as a nation of wealth and wisdom, and, of course, it is famous today as the world's largest democracy. Hindu beliefs, practices, and saints. The religion of this land, Hinduism, has always been open-minded and tolerant, with the belief that truth is one, paths are many. Thus, Hindus respect all other religions. Hinduism is the only major religion that worships God in both male and female form, as well as with and without any attributes. The original Sanskrit name for Hinduism is Sanatana Dharma, meaning eternal religion. Most Hindus believe in a supreme God, many gods and goddesses, spiritual worlds, the divinity of the soul, dharma, karma, reincarnation, God realization, and liberation from rebirth. The supreme God is known by various names depending on region and denomination. Brahman, Bhagavan, Shiva, Shakti, Vishnu, and more. He/she is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving, eminent, that is, present in all things, and transcendent beyond them as well. God exists within each person as Atman, the divine soul. God realization describes the experience of the divine within oneself. This profound encounter with God is regarded as the ultimate goal of life. Hindus teach that every human being can know God personally. Hindus also worship other divinities. Each divinity has distinct powers and areas of responsibility. For example, Lord Ganesha is the remover of obstacles, Saraswati is the goddess of knowledge, and Hanuman is the god of service and devotion. Each Hindu freely chooses the deities he or she wishes to worship. Dharma is a cardinal concept in Hinduism. It includes righteousness, truth, sacred law, ethics, duty, justice, religion, and the laws of nature. Dharma means that which upholds. The dharmic principle of ahimsa or non-violence is important to this day. Mahatma Gandhi led India's independence in 1947 using non-violent means such as peaceful protests, boycotts, strikes, and speeches that aroused the nation to throw off British rule. He once said, "Non-violence is the greatest force at the disposal of mankind. It is mightier than the mightiest weapon of destruction devised by the ingenuity of man." In the 1950s, Martin Luther King Jr. understood the power of Gandhi's methods and went to India to meet his followers. He later applied those methods to fight for and win civil rights for America's black minority. In the same way, Cesar Chavez won rights for the farm workers of California. Gandhi also inspired Nelson Mandela in his fight for freedom and racial equality in South Africa. Today, everyone knows about the Hindu concept of karma, the law of cause and effect. It means that anything a person does, whether good or bad, will eventually return to him in this or a future life. A popular way of expressing this is, what goes around comes around. Reincarnation is the central Indian belief that the soul, Atman, is reborn in a new body time and time again to grow and mature through all the experiences human life has to offer. Eventually, every soul achieves salvation by realizing its oneness with God and is no longer reborn. Hindus do not believe in a Satan or an eternal hell. Worship is central to a Hindu's life. So, every Hindu home has a place of worship. It may be as simple as a shelf with pictures of deities, or an entire room dedicated to the family's daily worship. A worship ceremony called puja, performed elaborately or very simply every day in the temple or in the home shrine, invokes the divine beings for blessings and happiness. The puja ceremony includes sacred chanting, bathing the image of the deity, offering food, flowers, incense, and other sacred substances, and the waving of lights. Hindus practice yogic disciplines every day called sadhana. Sitting on the floor, often in a yoga posture, they chant, sing devotional hymns, repeat the name of God while counting on beads, or simply meditate in stillness and silence. The temple is revered as the home of God. There are millions of temples in India, many quite ancient. The most important of these mystically designed structures cover hundreds of acres and receive thousands of pilgrims each day. Every Hindu is expected to pilgrimage to temples and holy places far and wide. These pilgrimages unify the religion as tens of millions of people travel throughout the subcontinent and interact. Hinduism has a rich history of sages and saints, both men and women from all castes. Some of the great saints wrote detailed explanations of the Upanishads and related scriptures, such as Adi Shankara in the 8th century CE, Ramanuja in the 11th, and Vallabhacharya in the 15th. Others, including Sambandar, Mirabai, and Tukaram, expressed their experience of God through devotional songs. Recent saints include Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, Anandamayi Ma, Swami Narayan, and Shirdi Sai Baba. Millions of Swamis and other saintly souls make up the spiritual leadership within Hinduism. Swamis have renounced the world and taken up spiritual life full-time. Special among these are the gurus, enlightened men and women who serve as religious teachers. Some gurus have millions of followers, others are humble hermits. Hinduism has no central organization and no single dogma. No one person or institution is in charge. Instead, there are thousands of independent guru lineages, spiritual traditions, monastic orders, and religious institutions. Hindu festivals. Hindus love festivals and enthusiastically celebrate many holy days each year. The biggest is called Diwali or Deepavali, the festival of lights. This 5-day event, held around the new moon in October or November, celebrates the victory of good over evil, light over darkness. Thousands of small lamps, including traditional clay oil lamps, are placed everywhere, and fireworks signal hope for mankind. It is a national holiday in India and in many countries with large Hindu populations. Barack Obama was the first US president to celebrate Diwali in the White House.
Dia, and wish you all a happy Diwali and a Sal Mubarak.
Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityarma Amrutangamaya Shanti 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 Hari.
One special festival, the Kumbh Mela, takes place every 3 years at 4 sacred river sites. The 2013 Kumbh Mela was held at Prayag, which is modern-day Allahabad, in northern India. During the 6 weeks, 130 million people pilgrimaged there from all across India and the world. On one day alone, 30 million pilgrims were present. It was the largest human gathering ever held on earth. Hinduism has persisted for thousands of years because the dharma, faith, and culture have instilled in each Hindu a unique and strong sense of identity, family, and spiritual purpose. It endures because it is a dynamic religion which gives complete freedom of practice, accepts that there are many ways to worship God, and provides festivals, temples, pilgrimages, gurus, and scriptures to illumine the path, thereby celebrating life itself. We hope that this documentary has increased your understanding of Hinduism and its history. Namaste. Namaste and welcome to India. My name is Raj Narayan. Today we're going to learn about this great country, its people, and its religious developments during the 7 centuries of 300 to 1000 CE. We will discover India's regional kingdoms, imperial political unification, and great centers of learning and religious development. We will also explore the life in her cities, villages, and homes, and witness a devotional movement that profoundly influenced Hinduism. During this time, India's kings built many magnificent monuments and great temples. I visited the Kailasanatha temple at Ellora in Maharashtra. This temple was carved out of a single solid stone hillside using only hammers and chisels and not by stacking stones together. The work was begun in the 8th century and took 100 years to complete. 400,000 tons of stone were removed to create the many chambers. Standing 266 feet high, it is the largest monolithic sculpture in the world. The 2 stairways leading to the main hall of the temple are carved with narrative episodes of the Hindu epics Mahabharata and Ramayana. This is a temple to Shiva, but it also has shrines to Vishnu. Many Buddhist and Jain cave temples are carved into nearby cliffs at Ellora. Ajanta, which is about 75 kilometers away, also has many large Buddhist cave temples. All these were supported by the Hindu kings. These are just some of the magnificent monuments built in a time when empires, religion, commerce, science, technology, literature, and the arts flourished across the subcontinent. Political history. In 300 CE, an estimated 75 million people, a third of the world's population, lived in India. Hindu tradition, culture, scriptures, and the Sanskrit language linked people across this immense and fertile subcontinent. Historians rely on 4 major types of evidence: archaeological studies, official inscriptions on stone or metal, coins, and contemporary texts including stories, poems, plays, and the accounts of foreign visitors. The greatest empire of the time was founded in the 4th century CE by Chandragupta I. His son Samudragupta extended the empire across India and rivaled the Mauryas in dominance over the region after a gap of 700 years. His grandson Chandragupta II, famously known as Vikramaditya, is considered the most brilliant king in India's entire history. Through his conquests and well-organized government, he forged political unity and peace across his vast empire. Historian A.L. Basham called it the happiest and most civilized region of the world at the time. What we regard as Indian culture today developed largely during the time of the Guptas. Ruling from their capital city of Pataliputra, the Gupta kings granted local and regional autonomy to the states under their control. Those far from the capital, such as in southern India, paid tribute but were nearly independent. The empire was responsible for security, major roads, irrigation projects, common welfare, and gave exceptional support to learning and the arts. Gupta culture and economy influenced much of Eurasia, notably China and Southeast Asia. The Gupta Empire declined in the late 5th century because of internal conflict and invasions by Central Asian Hunas, or Huns, who had conquered Indian territory east of the Indus to central India early in the 6th century CE. However, by the mid-6th century, Hindu rulers united and drove the Hunas out of India. India received many foreign visitors during this time. The most important were the Buddhist monks Faxian and Shenzang, who left us fascinating reports. Faxian came to India by the Silk Road from China in the 5th century and stayed in India for 13 years, wrote an account of his visit, and returned by sea. He reported, "Charitable institutions are numerous and rest houses for travelers are provided on the highway. In the cities and towns of this country, the people are rich and prosperous and seem to emulate each other in the practice of virtue. Another monk and chronicler, Shenzang, left China in 629 for India and returned after 16 years. He has left us the most complete account of the Indian subcontinent of his time. Shenzang describes a complex political environment with more than 70 regional powers. Many were part of the empire of King Harsha, while others were under the major imperial powers of the south. Shenzang was a guest of Harsha's court for about a year and praised his patronage of Buddhism, just rule, and generosity. In the 8th century, the Rashtrakuta dynasty took control of the entire Deccan region, parts of west-central India, and much of the south. The Rashtrakuta dynasty also built the Kailasanatha temple in Ellora. Between the 8th and 10th centuries, they competed with the Pratiharas and Palas for dominance over the subcontinent. The Pratiharas at their peak ruled much of the north. They were the first to effectively stop the Arab-Muslim invasions into western India in the 8th century. They exacted tribute from the Arab rulers of Sindh and Multan and blocked any further advancement for over 200 years. The Palas, a Buddhist dynasty centered in eastern India, reached their zenith in the early 9th century until the Pratiharas largely displaced them from the Ganga plains. There were several large Hindu kingdoms in the Deccan and southern India in this period. They included the Chalukyas, Pallavas, Pandyas, and Cholas. Rajendra Chola I unified the entire south. The Cholas boasted a large army and navy, and their maritime expeditions are unique in Indian history. To protect vital trade routes, they subdued kingdoms as far away as Malaysia and Indonesia. The Cholas also dominated southern India's trade between the Middle East, Europe, Southeast Asia, Africa, and China. Indian traders facilitated the spread of Hinduism and Buddhism throughout the kingdoms of Southeast Asia. For example, this is the great Chola temple at Tanjavur in South India, and this is the grand Prambanan temple in central Java, built in the 8th century by the Hindu king Pikatan in Indian style. And this is Angkor Wat in Cambodia, largest religious building in the world. India's rulers also welcomed Christians, Jews, Muslims, and Parsis into their kingdoms and encouraged them to settle and practice their faiths. This policy maintained religious harmony in society and, not surprisingly, aided international trade. For over 1,000 years, India was the richest region on earth. It produced 30% of the world's total food, goods, and services, while China produced 25%, and Europe, even by 1000 CE, produced just 11%. City and village life. Cities and towns grew up as centers of commerce along important trade routes at sea and inland river ports and around major temples and pilgrimage centers. Cities were largely self-governing. A ruling council consisted of a chief records clerk and representatives from large businesses, smaller merchants, and guilds of artisans. An ancient Tamil epic poem called The Ankle Bracelet describes life in a city of that time. Shops selling similar products were located near each other, as they still are in many cities of India today. The poet wrote, "In the streets, hawkers were selling ointments, bath powders, flowers, perfume, and incense. Weavers brought their fine silks and all kinds of fabrics made of wool or cotton. There were special streets for merchants of sandalwood, jewelry, faultless pearls, pure gold, and precious gems." One could see coppersmiths, carpenters, goldsmiths, tailors, shoemakers, and clever craftsmen making toys out of cork or rags, and expert musicians who demonstrated their mastery of the 7-tone scale on the flute and the veena. Only 10% of the population lived in cities like this. The rest lived in villages surrounded by agricultural land, as 2/3 still do in India today. Each village had a pond or reservoir, wells, grazing grounds, and at least one temple. India's year-round warm climate and monsoon rains allowed farmers to grow 2 crops a year or more. The villages were self-sufficient. People bartered and sold their goods in local markets and in nearby towns. Because the village jatis or castes were hereditary, the families became expert in their work, be they farmers, craftsmen, or merchants. Each family interacted with the other jatis. There would be a family barber, washerman, carpenter, blacksmith, and others providing their services to a family generation after generation. Each village was self-governed by an assembly of 5 elder men called the panchayat. The central unit of society was the joint family as it is today among many Hindus. Father, mother, sons and their wives, unmarried daughters and grandchildren all lived under one roof. Land and finances were held in common and everyone worked for the advancement of the family. Marriages were ideally arranged by the parents and the boy and girl had little say in the matter. But howsoever the union occurred, such as elopement, the marriage itself was recognized. In an arranged marriage, the boy and girl usually came from different villages. Visits to relatives created a strong communications network through which news, ideas, trade, and technological innovations flowed freely. A classical age of culture and religion. During this time, India gave rise to a vast wealth of literature, including plays, poems, songs, and epics in many languages. The world's first universities were flourishing in India during this time, including Takshashila, Nalanda, Vikramashila, and Vallabhi. Students studied the Vedas and 18 arts and sciences, which included medicine, surgery, astronomy, mathematics, agriculture, accounting, law, and military strategy. Shenzang stayed at Nalanda University for 5 years around 640 CE. He described it as a free residential center of advanced studies, notably Buddhist, with 1,000 teachers and 10,000 students. Nalanda was supported by royal endowments from both Hindu and Buddhist kings, as well as regular income from nearly 100 villages. Many Hindu saints of this time preached the importance of devotion to God in what is called the Bhakti movement. Bhakti means devotion or worship. The saints stressed one's personal relationship with the divine as a love-centered path of spiritual advancement. All over India, great Hindu temples were built or expanded between 300 and 1000 CE. Many are in large cities such as Somnath in the west, Ujjain in central India, Varanasi on the river Ganga in the north, Puri in the east, and Kanchi and Madurai in the south. Today, these remain powerful places of worship. Life in cities and villages centered around the temples, which were places of worship, scholarship, education, and the performing arts. During festivals, thousands of people pilgrimage to the most famous temples, as they do to this day. This flow of visitors helped local economies and spread cultural practices and religious belief throughout the nation. The period from 300 to 1000 CE was a golden age in India. The Sanskrit language with its many treasures on religion, philosophy, law, and the epics spread throughout not only India but most of Asia. Hinduism thrived throughout this period, with the Bhakti movement in particular popularizing devotional worship across the subcontinent through sacred stories and songs, especially those of the Tamil Arvars and Nayamnars. India's prosperity, stability, and religious harmony gave rise to philosophical, technological, scientific, literary, and artistic achievements that set high standards for succeeding generations. Unfortunately, there were those on her northwestern frontier who coveted India's wealth and lands and were driven by a desire to expand their faith and obtain glory. In part 3, we will tell the sad tale of how India suffered first from periodic raids of royal cities and rich temples for plunder, followed by the sustained conquest of large regions in pursuit of political power and religious dominance. Namaste. My name is Raj Narayan. In this documentary, we will talk about the foreign invasions and rule of India between 1000 and 1847 CE, from the Arab Muslims to the British rulers. This was a difficult time for the common people of India, who faced religious persecution and economic hardship. However, this period also saw the development of great music, devotional literature, and Indo-Islamic art and architecture. This is the great temple of Somnath, which held an important position in this period of Indian history, a time of warfare, conquest, and subjugation. Of all the ancient world cultures that the Muslims conquered and ruled during this era, only the Indic culture and Hindu identity survived largely intact and continue to flourish today. This is a high tribute to the determination and courageous resistance of the people of this great land. The foreign conquests. The first Muslim conquest was of the Sindh region by Arabs from Basra in southern Iraq in 712, not long after Islam was founded. By 870, Arab armies conquered the Hindu kingdoms of southwestern Afghanistan, but were prevented by the kings of northern India from advancing east of Khyber Pass. The next wave of invasions began in the late 10th century. These attacks were by Central Asian Muslim Turks who were already established in southwestern Afghanistan. Their leader, Mahmud of Ghazni, raided India 17 times between 1001 and 1024. In each city, his armies looted and destroyed temples and killed or enslaved the inhabitants. The attack on the renowned Shiva temple at Somnath in 1024 was the most horrific, involving the massacre of 50,000 defenders and the plunder of the city's fabulous wealth. As a result of these invasions and warfare, 20 million Indians perished between 1000 and 1100 CE, according to modern historians. This was about 10% of the population. In the words of the contemporary Arabic scholar Al-Biruni, these invasions utterly ruined the prosperity of the country. Between 1192 and 1194, Muhammad of Ghur, also Turkic, finally defeated the Hindu rulers of the Delhi-Ajmer region and the Ganga River Valley. In 1206, his regime established formal Muslim rule called the Sultanate in the key city of Delhi. By 1300, the Sultanate had secured stable control around its main strongholds in the north. Early in the next century, its invasions reached as far south as Tanjavur and Madurai. But these more remote regions were never annexed. Hindu rule generally continued in Rajasthan and Gujarat and thrived throughout the south during these 9 centuries, notably under the Vijayanagar Empire, founded in 1336 by Hindu princes reconverted from Islam. In 1504, Babur, a descendant of both the Mongol Emperor Genghis Khan and the famous Central Asian Muslim ruler Timur, seized Kabul, Afghanistan, and from there attacked India. He overpowered both the Muslim Sultan of Delhi and the Hindu Rajput Confederacy to form the Mughal Empire. His army was the first in India to use matchlock rifles and field cannons, which had deadly effect against his enemies. Babur's grandson Akbar, who became emperor in 1556, expanded the Mughal Empire over northern India and part of the Deccan by conquest and by entering into alliances with Hindu kings. Akbar's rule was noted for its religious harmony and the beginning of Indo-Islamic art and architecture. Unfortunately, Akbar's successors did not inherit his tolerance. His great-grandson Aurangzeb, who annexed most of the south, also resumed the destruction of temples and reimposed the hated jizya, a religious tax, on the Hindus. A legendary Hindu hero of this era was the courageous Maratha warrior Shivaji. By the time of his birth in 1627, the Marathas had lived under Muslim domination for hundreds of years. At age 17, Shivaji led his first military campaign. Within 10 years, he gained control of enough territory to alarm both his overlord, the Sultan of Bijapur, and Emperor Aurangzeb in Delhi, both of whom sent large armies to subdue him. But Shivaji's smaller, fast-moving and well-armed forces proved invincible. Unlike earlier Hindu kings, Shivaji made use of modern means of warfare such as rifles and cannons and developed a navy to expand his power. He inaugurated independent Maratha rule by performing his coronation in 1674. By the mid-18th century, the Mughal Empire had declined. The Sikhs, Jats, Rajputs and Marathas, as well as the Mughal imperial provincial governors of Oudh, Bengal and Hyderabad had carved independent states, thereby leaving no strong central government in India. Since 1498, when the Portuguese arrived in India, a number of European powers, including the Dutch, British and French, established trading posts in India. This also contributed to the disintegration of the Mughal Empire. The British, in particular, established the East India Company in 1600 to trade goods between Britain, India, and other Eastern countries. Like the other Europeans, they came to India as businessmen, not conquerors. However, over time, the East India Company fortified key trading posts using private armies, meddled in local politics, engaged in unfair trading practices, and levied heavy taxes. Through a strategy of divide and conquer, they attained near total control of the Indian subcontinent, a story we shall tell in part 4 of this documentary. Hindu religion during Muslim times. The Arab and Turkic Muslim invaders who swept across the Middle East, Africa, Central and South Asia were intent on religious domination, demanding conversion from those they conquered and subjugated. According to Muslim accounts of the time, thousands of Indian temples were sacked and destroyed, including hundreds at sacred pilgrimage destinations such as Somnath, Mathura, Vrindavan and Varanasi. A religious tax jizya was imposed on conquered non-Muslims. This tax and the periodic violence put strong pressure on Hindus to convert. However, the caste or jati system proved a major obstacle and only a fraction of Hindus converted. Jati formed an integral part of one's identity and place in the Hindu community, one which would be lost upon conversion. Some Hindus of low socioeconomic status were tempted to convert in order to improve their position. However, in practice, this adoption of the foreign religion did not bring the promised advancement. The converts from Islam and later Christianity simply formed new jatis or castes among themselves of similar status. Meanwhile, in South India, in areas beyond Mughal control, Hindu religion thrived, with frequent and spirited temple festivals providing a vital part of each community's social, cultural, and religious life. The art of building majestic temples reached its peak during this period. Many of these remarkable structures are popular places of worship today. Dynamic saint philosophers of the time inspired devotional lineages which strengthened Hindus and discouraged conversion. Among the most notable Vaishnava saints were Ramanuja and Madhva. Around 1200, Jayadeva, a popular writer in Orissa and Bengal, wrote the famous Gita Govinda. The Hindus of Maharashtra were similarly roused by Jnaneshwara, Namdev, Eknath, Tukaram, and Samarth Ramdas. In North India, Swami Ramananda inspired the worship of God as Lord Rama, a personal and intimate form of the divine. From his popular teachings, two traditions arose. The first included Nimbarka, Chaitanya, Surdas, Mirabai, and Tulsidas. Each encouraged worship of Lord Krishna or Lord Rama and influenced millions of people with spiritual songs in the regional languages. The second tradition began with Ramananda's disciple Kabir. Born in Varanasi, orphaned at a young age and raised by a low-caste Muslim family of weavers, he grew up in Islamic culture but was drawn as a boy to follow the teachings of the Hindu saint Ramananda. Kabir strove to promote religious harmony by appealing to both Hindus and Muslims, teaching that there is only one God for all religions. Often referring to Rama as his Lord, he wrote hundreds of spiritual poems in Hindi, which are sung to this day by millions. Sikhism. Another remarkable religion, Sikhism, emerged in India at the start of the 16th century and became a powerful force. Its founder, Guru Nanak, taught, "Realization of truth is higher than all else. Higher still is truthful living." He emphasized the continuous recitation of God's name and declared that meditation is the means to see God, who is omnipresent. Dissent from prevailing beliefs has always been common within Hinduism, sometimes resulting in new sects and from time to time even the development of distinct religions. 9 Sikh gurus followed Nanak. The 8th, Tej Bahadur, was executed by Aurangzeb for defending religious freedom. His son and successor Gobind Singh transformed the Sikhs into a warrior community called the Khalsa, which means the pure. Gobind Singh decreed that he was the last Sikh guru, and after his death, the Guru Granth Sahib, their holy scripture, would be the guide. He instituted the 5 articles of Sikh identity to be worn at all times: Kesh, uncut hair; Kangha, comb; Kirpan, dagger; Kara, iron bracelet; and Kachera or Kacha, short pants. These have both a religious and a military significance. From that time forward, the Sikhs have been an influential political and military force in North India. Sikhism developed and is concentrated mostly in the Punjab region. Today, Sikhism has 26 million followers all over the world. Teaching religion through songs. India has always had an extraordinarily diverse musical scene. It ranges from the complex compositions of the classical tradition to the villagers' devotional hymns and simple work songs in their local language. Bhajan and Kirtan are congregational singing of devotional songs. India's classical Carnatic music is also spiritual and devotional in nature, but much more complex. Songs were originally composed in Sanskrit and later increasingly in the regional languages such as Hindi, Telugu, and Tamil. Both are based upon the concepts of tala, which means rhythm, and raga, which is a system of notes producing a melody. Talas range from the simple and most common 8-beat Adi Tala to elaborate rhythms such as the Atta Tala, composed of 14 beats divided as 5, 5, 2, and 2.
ga da ki da da ga da ki da da ga di ni.
Ragas include notes from the 7-note Indian scale sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni, as well as microtones, which are like the sharps and flats of Western music, only more numerous.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, ga, ri, sa. Sa, ri, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, ga, ri, sa.
Singers and musicians improvise upon the basic melody while keeping within the chosen raga and tala. The results are spontaneous, creative, and never the same, much like the improvisations in Western jazz. This is one key way that Indian classical music differs from Western classical music, which is usually played exactly as it was composed. Both the popular village music and the more formal classical compositions are religious and emotional in nature. Song and storytelling were the main ways most people in those days learned and expressed their religion. It helped them endure difficult times. Beginning in 1000, Muslim armies conquered vast regions of India, causing great suffering and destruction. They sacked temples, monasteries, and major educational centers, including in 1193 the great university at Nalanda. South India was far from the Muslim capitals of Delhi and Agra and difficult to attack. It escaped the frequent warfare and the foreign dominance that beset North India, suffering only periodic raids, temporary subjugation, and payment of monetary tributes. Wherever Hindus were conquered, they continued to resist, mainly on a social and religious level. Most Hindus did not convert to Islam despite inducements, violence, and religious taxation. The arrival of European traders, especially the British East India Company, radically transformed the political situation over time. By force and skillful politics, the British slowly gained complete control of the Indian subcontinent, a story we shall narrate next time. Until then, Namaste.